Well, good morning and welcome to Backstory with Dr. B. It is Monday, March 18th. I had to check the date. I'm not sure what date it was after the long weekend. I had a very, very productive and busy weekend, but I didn't get to this um, until this morning, Monday morning. So I'm trying to bang this out bright and early. I had originally printed out an entire text of Tucker Carlson's interview with Vladimir Putin and was going to do like a whole thing on it. And I talked for like 45 minutes, and then I looked at the tape afterwards, and I'm like, this is crap. And then I just deleted it. And so I hope I'm not going to be quite so draconian today. I've had time to digest it a little bit, and a few things have crossed my radar, and I hate to parody that from some other broadcaster, but a couple of things that came across my attention that I thought deserved some commentary. So Scott Rassmusen, he's a famous pollster. For time immemorial, he's been doing it for like 35 years, and I heard him interviewed by Newt Gingrich the other day because he apparently has divined and found who our elites are. The United States is elites. Yeah, we have those elites. They're always talking about the elites run everything and they control everything. Well, he found them. He said he was. I watched this interview and it was so funny, and it's so unself-aware by both of them, because obviously both of them are the elites, right? I mean, this guy, influences public opinion by putting out these polls, and Newt Gingrich was a member of Congress for like forever, and Rasmussen is like, hey, you know what? I was doing some study, doing some surveys, and I found that like at every 1,000 people, there were like a few people who were really crazy in their opinions, like really far, like excessive compared to the vast majority of people. So he immediately realized that there was a small subset of people that were very, very different than most of the people. He thought, I wonder what's up with these freaks, So he decided to look into it, and he discovered the elites. And he said who they are. I've got them up on my computer screen right now. And I find it funny because as an elite, he wouldn't know that he was one, right? He would be just sort of self-consciously aware. I told a patient one time who was really into horses. I had found a research article by some incel who had done research and said, hey, guess what? Horses have handedness. Like they prefer to turn left versus right, or they prefer to turn right versus left. And she's like, yeah, anybody who's ever ridden a horse knows that. And I just died. I was like, oh, yes, it's not real until science says it's real, but people who live in the real world already know. So Scott Rasmussen didn't know, and he picked up that rock and he saw all those maggots crawl out from underneath it, and he's like, oh, what are these maggots? It's like, oh, those are my people. So just a couple of things about the elites, right? Most of them have a postgraduate degree. They live in densely populated urban areas, and they make bank. Most of them make up more than $150,000. Let's see. There's all kinds of weird stuff. 73% of them are Democrats. Their vast majority are white. Perceptions of individual freedom. Oh, this is sick. 57% of normal voters feel there is not enough personal freedom in this country. In the elite, only 1% think there's not enough. 21% say there's not enough. And 47% say there's too much personal freedom. They don't want you to fly on an airplane. They don't want you to drive an internal combustion vehicle. They don't want you to eat meat. They want to eat meat. They want to fly on an airplane. They always do. They go to these climate conferences and they show up, in their private jet. I mean, Obama moved to Martha's Vineyard right on the water. And that's why his chef died, or whoever that guy was, because he lived right on the water. He's not worried about climate change and the oceans rising anytime soon in his lifetime. He doesn't care. They live in places right on the water. I've been to Annapolis, downtown Annapolis. The water hasn't risen, I guess it is, since I've been here, and apparently since the 1700s, because some of those buildings are pretty old. Most of them went to the dirty dozen schools, Northwestern, University of Pennsylvania, Yale, Harvard, University of Chicago, MIT, Stanford, Princeton, Berkeley, the usual kind of stuff. 69% of the politically obsessed elites feel that there's too much individual freedom in America. They want to tamp you down, bro. They do not want you running around doing all kinds of stuff like you want to do. Personal freedom. I mean, what does that even mean? Trust in the professional class. 70% of the elites like, yes, follow the science. 6% of the voters are like, no, it's BS. And I'm going with the voters. I was raised by a bread truck driver, and to give you, I had a dear friend of mine give me a little bit of advice. He goes, why don't you talk about what you're an expert in? And obviously, as a chiropractor, I'm an expert in chiropractic, and I've been vetted in court as an expert on numerous occasions and have done quite well in testimony. But in terms of what else I'm an expert on, and when I'm talking geopolitics and sociology here, is, my parents were divorced at a very early age, and my father took us for, my sister and I, for visitation, right? We would be allowed a visitation every certain amount of time. And he we went out in the car and we never came back. He kidnapped us, and he was a non-custodial parent abduction, and I was kidnapped and run all over the country, for 3 years. He took us to Denver first, and my family came out to visit us there for Christmas. Wasn't that nice? Well, the courts are like, where are you at? Do you know where your son is? My grandparents got up there and lied through their Baptist teeth. Yeah, no, we don't know where he is. They had just been to Denver, and my cousin ate brains and eggs on the train. They took the Amtrak train. Who takes the train anyway? But I guess they took the train. I would love to take a train ride to Denver. That would be like a lot of fun. And then we, the cops caught us, in Denver because, Mom's was still hiring private detectives to try and get us back. And so we got a call in the middle of the night, and we had to pack up that night, throw all our stuff in banana boxes, and wait for the landlord to show up to give us our cleaning deposit that morning. And that's when PTSD or PTSI hit for me. I remember sitting there nervous as a cat, terrified of what was going to happen. And from there, he took us, back to California, but to Morro Bay. We lived there for about a month before they caught us again because he was calling his mother nonstop, and apparently they had the phones tapped, and so they're like, aha, we got you. Well, this time it was off to Canada. We were going to try and get into Canada because that's where all good Americans go, right? And that's where all the liberals want to go. I'm going to move to Canada if Trump wins again. They never move. They just stay in their little enclaves because the 1% live in just a few zip codes. They all live in the same area. They all go to the same schools. They're all part of the same group of people. They're all part of a conspiracy, which is what my family engaged in when my father and my mother were divorced, and she was trying to, assert her legally given custody of us. And so we tried to get into Canada. I remember sitting at the Canadian border off of 95, I think it was 95, rolling up through Washington. We tried to get in, hauling a U-Haul full of furniture. Dad tells the guy at the border guard guy, everything. He's like, yeah, my wife got custody, but I want the kids because she's all, whatever, and she's a bad person. So obviously I'm a good person, so I need to get into Canada. And he's like, look, bro, I can't let you in, but I won't say anything. Bros before hoes. And so he turned around, and we came back, settled in Olympia, Washington, until finally, after 3 years with no contact with my mother, my grandparents and my family came up and visited us up in Washington, too, even though nobody knew where we were. So what is my expertise in talking about the 1% and the elites and gaslighting and somebody lying to you about that your life is normal or that your life is abnormal or that your views are abnormal or that your feelings are abnormal? No, you should feel this way because this is how we feel. Well, this is my area of expertise. I've been gaslit my entire childhood. It caused enormous trauma and psychological problems for me over the years. So I'm going into this Scott Rassmusen thing, not so much to talk about the 1%, Oh, this is funny, though. You have to look at this. This is one of his slides. I find your lack of faith disturbing. I know it's all in mirror image, but you have to look at me, and I don't have a proper camera. Anyway, so the weirdest thing about the elites is that 93% of them will cheat in an election to win it because they're so self-righteous and convinced that they're right. Gee, what's that sound like? Maybe something that I have experienced. So people who are so convinced that something's right that you would traumatize a child and cut them off from their parent for 3 years, and the entire family participated in it. And now I'm not damning them because most of them are dead anyway. I don't mean that in a juicy way, because I don't relish the thought of anybody dying, but everybody does die. I'm 60. I mean, I'm looking at the last round going. So I thought I would comment on this whole situation. So Rassmusen comes up like, oh, look, I've discovered my own family tree. I'm going to do some more research and find out more about them. It's like, well, hey, guess what? These are the people that are oppressing most of the people in this country, in the sense that most of the country feels like the country's going in the wrong direction. But that tiny little 1%, they're the ones who are in charge of everything. Right? They're in charge of the entertainment industry. They're in charge of politics. They're in charge of corporate. They're in charge of most of the money, and they're the ones setting national policy. There was a research study that came out some time ago that said, the United States is not a democracy. When Joe Biden got up there with the last State of the Union, we want to bring democracy to Ukraine, and we're fighting for democracy. It's like, no, we're not a democracy. Our government has been statistically proven to be an oligarchy. Our government does what is best for the people who give the politicians the money. Everybody knows this, except for the 1%ers, because they're freaking morons. And they are morons. They're not really actually that smart. Look at the lady from Harvard, plagiarizing left and right. You've got all this kind of stuff going on, and you've got professor of honesty just got fired for plagiarizing at some college. You can't even keep track of this kind of stuff. Yes, it's morning time and I'm having my coffee. So anyway, so it's kind of like the movie Falling Down with Michael Douglas. When Michael Douglas, he's this white guy with a buzz cut, used to work in the aerospace industry, ends up going on a rampage through town because he can't get burgers served at the time he wants, and ends up with a duffel bag full of guns. And at the very end, he's like, when did I become the bad guy? Rassmusen hasn't figured that out yet. Him and Newt Gingrich and all the people in the elites, with their graduate degrees and their their thing. It's a social group. They hang out together. They live together. They don't hang out with the plebs like us. The most they'll see of us is, us serving them coffee or adjusting their backs or something like that. Although honestly, I work on the working class, and so I consider myself working class because my dad drove a bread truck, for years and worked in grocery. And my patients are mostly working class by and large. Anyway, so Michael Douglas thing aside, Putin was interviewed by Tucker Carlson not too long ago. And I wanted to do a big thing on that. But Putin made an interesting comment. Tucker Carlson said, well, what about Trump? Do you want Trump or do you want Biden? And he says, well, I'll go with Biden, because he's a traditional politician and Trump's a live wire. Well, that's actually not true. I don't think Putin wants Biden because Biden's a traditional politician. Biden rabidly hates him. Him and his kid have been flagrantly involved in this whole Ukraine situation. He wants it because he's incompetent, and it's much better to fight an incompetent opponent than one who's unpredictable and aggressive like Trump is, because who knows what Trump's going to do, right? No, he's going to go with Biden, wait for him to die out, and it's going to be much easier for Vladimir Putin to go with a Biden who's going to die, assuming he makes it that long, and end up with a Kamala Harris or Gavin Newsom or something like that. He's going to roll over those guys like nobody's business. But he did make a point. He said it really doesn't matter in the end because it's not the president that matters. He said, and I'm going to quote, so I'm going to look down here. It is not about the personality of the leader. It is about the elite's mindset. If the idea of domination at any cost, based also on forceful actions, that means war, Iraq, Libya, Syria, all that stuff, based also on forceful actions, dominates the American society, nothing will change. It will only get worse. But if, in the end, one comes to the awareness that the world has been changing due to objective circumstances, and that one should be able to adapt to them in time, using the advantages that the U.S. still has today, then perhaps something may change. And I'm like, well, that's interesting. And then I got depressed. Because I'm like, how's that going to happen? These people are completely in charge. You know, they're smoking they're smoking their own supply. You know, they're drinking the Kool-Aid. They think that Putin wants to conquer the world. They want to conquer the world. We're the ones with the giant military budget, you know, and the bases all over the world. Well, he did a second interview, and that was in advance of Emmanuel Macron's, the head of France. It was in advance of his supposed speech where he was like, I'm going to put French troops in Odessa, you know, and we're going to get ready to go in there. Because they're freaking out. The Europeans are freaking out because the war in Ukraine is going badly, which I told my children like last year. And my daughter was like, no, the Ukrainians are going to win. And I'm like, girl, you are not reading as much news as I do. I've always done this. I've never been able to stop. So anyway, so he did another interview before the Emmanuel Macron speech, and he was talking about developments in Russia and what's happening in Russia and what's happening in other countries. And this is just an amazing paragraph, so I'm just going to read it whole. The point is that this so-called golden billion, and that is the West, has been practically parasitizing on other peoples for centuries, 500 years. 500 years refers to 1492, when Columbus sailed the ocean blue and came and gave diseases to the Native Americans and committed the first instance of accidental germ warfare. They tore apart the unfortunate peoples of Africa, they exploited Latin America, they exploited the countries of Asia, and of course no one has forgotten that. I have the feeling that it is not even the leadership of these countries, that's the elites, although it is very important, but the ordinary citizens of these countries feel in their hearts what is happening. They associate our struggle for our independence and true sovereignty. The Russians, you know, struggle for true sovereignty. In other words, we're not gonna be pushed around by you anymore. You know, we're not gonna be pushed around from Boston Powers, with their aspirations for their own sovereignty and independent development. And I thought, wow, it took Vladimir Putin to express what most people feel, that our country is not working for us in our best interests, and that we would like, ordinary citizens, we feel what's happening. We know our country's going in the wrong direction. The struggle for our independence and true sovereignties with aspirations for our own sovereignty and independence. American people just want to be left alone. We just want to do America. We don't want to do everybody else. We don't want to do Ukraine. We don't want to do Europe. We don't want to do Iraq. We don't want to do big pharma. We want to be left alone so that we can have a nice life. That was the whole point of coming here, was to get away from oppression. And now the government and the elites have become the oppressors. And when he mentions the 500 years of colonialism, 500 years of raping. I haven't finished it yet. Wait. They've spent centuries filling their bellies with human flesh and their pockets with money. But they must realize that the vampire ball is ending. Oh my gosh, that is so epic, especially coming from an Eastern European, because there are actually vampires in Eastern Europe. Everybody knows that. Actually, most of the vampires work in the federal government. Oh, stop me. Anyway, okay, so the vampire ball is ending, and aspirations of the common people. So Putin basically is saying the elites are the problem in your country, and you're pushing us into this war that we're now ending. And the average people, they have aspirations of just being treated right. And he says, yes, in their own countries, they also deceive people. It has an effect. You know, it has an effect because they're deceiving us. And we know they're lying to us. You know when you're being lied to. I mean, some of the propaganda is just not even, it's just below the belt. Well, anyway, so, did I burp? I might have burped. I'm sorry. I do that all the time. It's kind of my trademark. Maybe I'll start and stop with my podcast with a burp. So anyway, I thought it was very funny that Vladimir Putin would express the hidden aspirations of the average American person who doesn't want to be ruled by an unaccountable 1% oligarchy type of government, and who would rather just be able to live their lives and not be lied to all the time and have their money taken and sent over other places. And guess what? You know, that 500 years of colonialism, everybody thinks it's all racial. It's not racial. It's never been racial. I mean, they told themselves it was racial. That was the sideline, but really it's just greed. It's just people who want more power. Back in the 1970s, you know, the elites and the corporate and the government decided that they wanted to wage war on the middle class. They wanted to reduce the working class's wages by exporting manufacturing to cheap places overseas. And since that period of time, middle class wages have done terribly, and working class jobs have almost evaporated. We've gotten rid of all of our industry. You know, we want to fight China. We're giving China China has all of our factories. We'd have to import the shells and all the materials from China in order to fight them. We'd have to buy the rope they're going to hang us with, you know, kind of a thing. So it was just kind of this. I'm not articulating it really well, but it was just this realization that even somebody like Vladimir Putin can look at our situation and go like, your leaders are crazy and they're stupid. And I have a feeling that, you know, our struggle for freedom from your leaders' oppression mirrors your struggles for freedom from your leaders' oppression as well. And I believe that that is the case. And the solution to that, way above my pay grade. But I know when I'm being gaslit, and I know when I'm being abused, because I was abused psychologically for years. And I know it. I lived it. And that's my area of expertise. And so that's why I'm fascinated by geopolitics, because I'm always wondering what's really going on here. Because that's what I wondered as a kid. Like, what's going on here? What's going on here? Why do we have to back up and move in the middle of the night? Why am I getting headaches? I woke up with a headache today. And I've done 22 minutes. I've probably done enough. I think I made my point. Our leaders are not working in our best interest. We need to jettison them. We need to get out of an oligarchy and get back into a democracy. And however we need to do it, I don't know, because I don't trust anybody. As Putin said, with regard to negotiating with the West, he goes, I don't trust them. I mean, I've been being lied to since the 1980s about the whole border situation. It's deliberate. They're doing it deliberately. You know, jobs are going down. They're doing it deliberately. Inflation's going up. They're doing it deliberately. They're siphoning money up. Siphoning money up. Everything that makes you poorer makes somebody else richer. And keep that in mind. So when things are hard, somebody else is getting it easier. I guess that's all I got to say for today. Makes me sad. Well, have a great day. Nice to start off in such a cheery mood, but at least my wife won't have to hear it.